Welcome to the AKW podcast, a place where we'll ditch the wellness lies you've been sold and learn what your mom never taught you. If you've ever wondered if the wellness industry is just a billion-dollar scam built on patriarchy and diet culture, it is. Women have been chasing impossible standards for far too long, and I'm here to help you step off the hamster wheel once and for all. No more quick fixes, no more powders or potions or empty promises. Just real talk, real science, real people, and real strategies to help you feel at home in your body and redefine what wellness is on your own terms. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the AKW podcast. I am so glad you're here. I am Andrea Nichols, and today's episode is episode 2 of my 3-part series on boundaries. If you didn't listen to my first one, it dropped on 2 weeks ago. Go back and listen to that one. It is all about how we need to embody our boundaries energetically. So it's not just about setting boundaries, because that's the easy part. Setting the boundary is the easy part. Upholding the boundary and feeling good and regulated in our boundary is the hard part. It is hard a lot of times to not feel shaky or guilty or shameful when we have boundaries. So go back and listen to that, because we all need to learn and spend some time working on how do we feel solid in our boundaries. And then today's episode 2, is what do we do when somebody else's boundary makes us feel some kind of way? Like it feels like rejection or we take it personally. So I got a lot of good stuff to share about that. And then in 2 weeks, I'm going to drop my third podcast in this series, all about how boundaries should not be a brick wall, how they should be firm, but yet fluid, right? We don't want to get so rooted into our boundary that it becomes like really from a place of fear and very limiting. So we miss maybe some connections that we could have. So I purposely spaced these 3 episodes out instead of making one big long episode. So they're easier to digest, right? We have short little spurts of information, but also because I'm giving you some tangible, actionable things that I want you to do in between each one. Some things to think about and to work on before the next episode. So like I said, if you haven't gone back and listened to episode 1, I hope you will. I hope you'll listen to this one today and do some of that homework in it. And then I'll see you back here on August 1st for the 3rd and final one in this series. If you're enjoying this podcast series, please let me know. I would love to know. Drop a comment wherever you are listening to the podcast and let me know what you're thinking. That helps me just know that you're enjoying the content that I'm putting out. But then also it helps us grow and build our community. And that is so important because so many women need to be hearing this message. And this is one of my free resources for people to get some of this coaching and, encouragement around actual wellness, like the things going back to the basics and the things that's actually going to help move the needle forward for living good in your own body, for feeling good, living good, and finding joy and security from within yourself. So thank you for being here. And thank you if you write a comment or drop an emoji or like the podcast. It means the world to me. All right. Without further ado, let's talk about what it feels like when someone else's boundary, like when they say no. How does that feel in our body? So my husband and I, when we first started dating, he was much more regulated than I was. I was coming into our relationship with some trauma. I had been divorced not too long prior to my relationship. After my divorce, before my husband, there was a few, but there was one significant one, and it was definitely not necessarily a healthy one. And it was more on the partner side than my side, but that obviously spilled over into me. So I had some dysregulation. I had some insecurities. I had some traumas popping up from childhood, and it was showing up in the boundaries that he had. And I was feeling some kind of way about it because I thought his boundaries was a rejection for me. So I was constantly waiting for the next shoe to fall. Like I was constantly waiting for him to be like, this isn't working. And thankfully, we were able to have a lot of conversation around it. And I was able to, voice my concerns, and he was able to openly speak his truths as well. And we were able to work through it so that it didn't end our relationship because it very easily could have, right? So I have lived in a very important relationship. That's just one example, but I have lived this feeling of rejection just by somebody placing a boundary. And we learned last week that an embodied boundary has nothing to do with the other person and the experience of the other person, but of ourselves. So my husband's boundary had nothing to do with me. He didn't create the boundary because of me. He didn't create it to try to control me. It was just a boundary that he already had in place. And it was a way he chose to live his life, but it felt like a personal attack to me. So that was something that I really had to work through, and I had to heal some old traumas. And this happens. It happens to every single one of us. I bet if you thought about it, you could think of a time that it happened to you. And it's common, right? It's normal. And we know it shouldn't sting, but yet it still does. So that is what this episode is about. And we're not, it's not about shame. It's not about shaming ourselves for knowing better, but still being stuck there. It is about understanding this deeper wound that gets activated and how to shift your response to that wound. All right. So what do I talk about when I'm saying wounds? And you heard me say that I felt like I had some baggage or some wounds that had to be healed. When it feels like when someone doesn't make space for you in the way that you are expecting them to, it feels like rejection, or it feels like they're closing off connection to you. It brings up old wounds, right? It definitely did for me. And if you're a people pleaser, this gets really hard because it makes zero sense to you why somebody else wouldn't be a people pleaser too. And why wouldn't they see that you're hurting and you're feeling rejection and they would just automatically try to fix it? Because as a people pleaser, that's what you would do. So it's like a double whammy. They have the boundary that hurts the wound, and then you don't understand also why are they not trying to just immediately fix it? Your nervous system is not registering their boundary as an okay boundary, but it's registering it as disconnection or danger. And this a lot of times is coming up from old childhood experiences or old relationships experiences. And we've been conditioned to equate someone else's limits with our unworthiness. So it might be like emotional neglect or inconsistency or codependency. Your body keeps the score. There was actually a book called that. I don't know if you've read it. I actually haven't read it. But your body keeps the score. But that is true. Your nervous system is imprinted with information of experiences you had as a child or in a previous relationship. And if it came from childhood, there might not have been enough education and enough maturity to understand the situation. So you only know what you felt in that moment. And your body never wants to feel that again. Your body is always looking for safety and security. And your body is always it is hardwired. Your brain is hardwired, your nervous system is hardwired to find situations that confirm your bias because it is looking for security. And security often looks like a previous experience because we know in that previous experience what is going to happen. Even if that previous experience isn't one that we necessarily want to repeat, your nervous system is hardwired to search for consistency. Inconsistency a lot of times makes us hyper alert, and we feel like the rug is being pulled out from underneath us. And like I said earlier, we're waiting for that other shoe to drop. So inconsistency a lot of times can make us feel emotionally unsafe, insecure. Codependency, that's another word I said a minute ago. That is where your safety is related to closeness. Or maybe you find co-regulation in another relationship. We talked about this a lot. I did a mastermind, not a mastermind. I'm so sorry. I did a master class with a registered dietitian and friend, Stephanie, a while back, and you might have heard me mention it before, but we talked about this a lot. It was in Cortisol Chaos, and she talked about the nutrition side, about what we could do to help regulate cortisol, the stress hormone. And then I talked a lot about it in terms of lifestyle and mindset. And codependency was one of the things that we really talked about a lot. Sometimes codependency or co-regulation can be good.
right? So we're using somebody else to help regulate us, but sometimes it can be codependent where you don't know how to regulate without having the other person, without having that safety and closeness. And it could be like maybe you learned to be codependent as a child. You got your co-regulation from your mom and you look to her as to what was alarming or what was security. And then when you no longer have that relationship and that closeness, you're searching for that again. But when her patterns don't show up in the person that you're now trying to build a relationship with, all the red flags come up. So it's really interesting how much our body does keep the score and how much is happening on a subconscious level, a level that we don't even recognize or realize. And I think this is really interesting. And we're saying two siblings in the same household can have totally different experiences based off of their nervous system reaction. So I want you to release the shame around that idea too, that if you grew up with somebody else and they don't struggle with the same struggles you struggle with, that doesn't mean that you're broken. It just means that you're a different individual, and that is okay. That is the way it's supposed to be. We're not supposed to be identical. Another thing that really can feed into this is the conditioning that we get as women and girls, because we get it when we're very young, growing up in a patriarchal society. Girls are raised to be pleasant, selfless, and emotionally available, often at our own expense. We're taught to smile when it's uncomfortable. We're taught to give hugs even if we don't like it. To not be rude, to make sure you say hey. We're taught to share even if we don't want to. We're taught to be quiet, to keep the peace. Don't talk too much. It's always the girl, right, that gets blamed for talking too much in class. It's never the boy. We're taught that we're too opinionated and too loud, to tend to others' feelings before your own. Make sure you say you're sorry. Make sure that you ask them what they want to do. We're taught that anger is dangerous. Like we shouldn't have big emotions. We're taught to cry instead of have rage, or apologize instead of protest. It is a learned value that we should be chosen, liked, and praised more than feeling seen, clear, safe, and sovereign. But now boys aren't often taught that, right? Boys learn that boys will be boys. So they're powerful and they're permitted to do whatever because they're a boy. Because boys will be boys. We're taught that having needs as a boy is normal because he's a growing boy. You don't ever hear us talk about a growing girl. It's always a growing boy. We teach our boys a lot of times that emotional labor is optional. It's not expected, where we expect that emotional labor out of our young girls and out of our wives and mothers and sisters. We don't expect that out of our boys. They're never expected to soothe or caretake or anticipate others' feelings. I shouldn't say never. It is rarely that they are taught that. And I do feel like this is growing and changing some, but it is still not as common, right? We don't hand a boy a baby doll to pretend to care for it. It's not natural. We hand them toys to build things, to make things. We hand them doctor's kits, and we hand the girls a toy kitchen. We teach boys that their no is to be respected, but not necessarily to respect a girl's no. So then when a girl grows up and she turns into a woman, well, let's talk about that for a second too, because how many times have you heard a grown woman being called young lady or girl? I know it's happened to me numerous times. I still get called a girl. I'm 45 years old and I still get called a girl. But my husband does not get called a boy. He doesn't get called a young boy like I get called a young girl or a young lady. He's called a man. But that doesn't happen as often with women. Women are still referred to as girls or ladies instead of women. So when a girl grows up into a woman and she's trying to set boundaries, a lot of times she might feel like she's being difficult because now she's too intense, or now she's taking up too much space. She's speaking too boldly. That's not acceptable. It's okay for a man to do it. He's not being difficult. He's being a leader. If a woman wants to make time for herself in the day, it's selfish, especially if she has children. She should be at home taking care of the children. But the man, he leaves the house and he goes to work, and that's totally fine. And if he wants to go after work to the gym to work out, also a-okay, totally great. But the woman, she shouldn't go work out because she has children at home. Who's going to feed them and bathe them if she's not there? Women are also commonly called aggressive, right? We're supposed to be nice. We're not supposed to be aggressive. But again, a man not labeled as aggressive is labeled as typically a leader. Women are cold or harsh when they put boundaries into place. But again, a man is just identified as, knowing what he wants and needs. But it's a double standard in our society. And there's goods and bads, right, for both men and the women. It can be a struggle for a man to grow up in a patriarchal society, too. I'm not saying that. But what we're talking about today is women and boundaries. And those are some of the double standards with women in our society. Women do not often get to say no without backlash. Women don't often get to put themselves first. We're always expected to put our spouse first, or our children first, or our parents first, or our in-laws first, or our friends first. We are always the last person. I mentioned this around Mother's Day. Like, I freaking hate Mother's Day because all these people go on and talk about what a good, selfless mom they have. And why is that what makes a good mom? Why can't a good mom be somebody that puts herself first, that shows us what it is like to lead, to show us what it is like to put her health first? Why is it about, oh, my mom, never skipped a whatever, or, always did this for us? Why can't it be, oh, my mom, she, showed me how to be a good leader. She showed me how to be a strong woman. She showed me how to set boundaries. Like, that's what I want to talk about on Mother's Day. But that's a whole nother soapbox for another day. So when someone doesn't accommodate us, right, because we're so accommodating to everyone else, a lot of times we kind of feel wronged without even fully realizing why. And it's partially because we might have some old wounds. It is partially because we are conditioned to care for others. And then subconsciously we're like, well, why are they not caring for us to the same level we're caring for them? When we set boundaries, when a woman sets a boundary, it seems as disruptive. But when a man sets a boundary, it is seen as honoring what is in the best interest for himself or his family. Boundaries also, when somebody else sets a boundary, can really act as a mirror for you. So when you get triggered or you feel some kind of way based off of someone else's boundary, that's a mirror. It reflects something within you that you're not giving to yourself. You're looking outward, you're looking externally for safety or a need to be met, and being triggered by someone else's boundary is time for you to look into yourself. Take that, mirror it into yourself. It is a story that you're carrying. It's part of you that is still searching for approval. Like I said, it is when you're trying to confirm a bias you already have within yourself. Something is waking up inside of you. I want you to, when you feel that, when you feel triggered, I want you to realize, okay, this is a mirror that something needs to be addressed. So I want you to pause and get curious about your reaction rather than collapsing into it. So ask yourself, why do I feel this way? Like with my husband, like when he had his boundaries, some of the boundaries that he had that I felt some kind of way about. I was like, why do I feel this way? And luckily I went to him and I was like, yo, like this is making me feel this kind of way. Like, let's talk about it. So I want you to get curious about why, and maybe you don't feel comfortable enough to go talk to that person yet, but at least within yourself, talk to yourself and figure out, okay, why do I feel this kind of way? What is this bringing up within me? When was the last time I felt this way? What was that situation? And also, when was the first time I felt this way, and see if you can remember that situation, because that's going to give you a lot of information to kind of work within, to kind of start to sort out and untangle and see some patterns. We hear a lot talk about your inner child. So healing this inner child who equates boundaries with abandonment is a great place to start. Sometimes it's called like reparenting. And the work begins showing your inner child, or that wounded, part of you, that someone else's regulation isn't about your worth, right? It has nothing to do with you. They're not, just like my husband was not setting this boundary in reflection to me. It was a boundary he already had in place well before me. It was just the first time it was showing up in my world. Okay, but it had nothing to do with me. If we go back to last episode, when you're trying to learn to set an embodied boundary, you're setting it for your own experience, not to control the experience of others. And that is the same thing that we have to remind ourselves when we're on the other side of the coin. Their boundary is for their experience, and it is not about controlling your experience. If you're having an experience from their boundary, that is your cue to dig in. That is your cue that you might need to do a little reparenting or a little digging, trying to figure out, like I said, when was the last time you felt this way? When was the first time you felt this way? And then some great things to do as you're thinking about that. Journal about it. Right? Think about some things, journal about it. Maybe I'll talk in a second about like a somatic check-in that you could do. Maybe find some affirmations that you could say. But I want you to pause and I want you to reflect on why you're feeling the way you feel. Ask yourself, when was the last time I felt it? When was the first time I felt it? Is this a familiar feeling that I feel a lot of times? Is it a rare feeling? Is it an urgent feeling? Can I feel, this is the big one, can I feel this, hold space for it, but not react or act from it? That's the hardest part, right? How do I hold this emotion, honor this emotion, but not react or act from it? So you have to ground into your body, not into the emotion. A little tip, if you can like ground yourself feet flat to the floor, either sitting or standing, and take some nice deep breaths, holding longer exhales, maybe hands to heart, that's going to help you kind of take a second, and just a nice way to help your body know, okay, we're safe. You might not feel great, but you're safe. And then you're going to be able to separate emotion from fact. It's okay to name the feeling, but it is not okay to write the story. So it is okay to say, I feel abandoned, because you're naming the feeling. I feel abandoned, I feel rejected, I feel unsafe, I feel uncomfortable, I feel some kind of way, whatever it is you're feeling. But it's not okay to write the story. So it's not okay to say, they're pulling away from me. I must be too much. I did this yesterday, and so that is probably why X, Y, and Z. You're writing a story that you don't know the whole, like you're not the author of the story, right? Their boundary, they're the author. You are not. You can state how you feel, and that might help in healing, but you cannot write the story. You cannot attach an emotion to that and still continue the healing. And then just continue to ask yourself, what does this boundary remind me of? Does it remind me of a parent withdrawing love? Does it remind me of a friend who abandoned me? Does it remind me of an ex-boyfriend that did X, Y, and Z? Like, where is this emotion rooted in? Why do I feel this kind of way about their boundary when their boundary doesn't have anything to do with me, but everything to do with what they're trying to create for their experience? Remind yourself of your reality then. They are not your parent. They are not your ex-husband. They are not the friend that abandoned you. Their boundary does not mean disconnection. This is someone tending to their nervous system, not punishing mine. Give yourself what you are looking for. If you feel unloved, figure out how to love yourself. If you feel unsafe, figure out how to anchor into the present. If you feel not good enough, figure out how to remind yourself that you are a whole human, even if someone steps away. And you know, I am not into this whole like hyper independence. Like, I believe we need community and connection, but I also believe that you should be self-sustainable on your own. We are wired for community, we are wired for connection, but also you have to be able to find happiness, security, love, joy, all of that in your own self before you can anchor into somebody else and find those things. So this isn't about a hyper independence. This isn't about a I can do it by myself, but this is about finding regulation within yourself before you tether your regulation to somebody else. So I want to go into a few journal prompts that might work for you if you were trying to work through some of those ways of like rehealing your inner child. Again, any of the things I just mentioned right before, those would be great to journal around too. But if you like more like specific questions, ask yourself like what emotion came up when that boundary was enforced. What was the first 3 emotions that you felt? Just write them down without shame, without guilt, without pretense. Just write the emotions down. That's all you have to do. And then, if you want to go a little deeper, what did I make those emotions mean? What did I make the boundary mean? That is a tough one. That is one that originally, a lot of times we put our story on it, right? We're putting our story onto the emotion and onto the boundary. So we've named the emotion, we've named the reality, but we're not, and we're saying, okay, this is the story I'm putting on it, but we're not believing that story. What part of me felt rejected or abandoned or ignored? And how old does that feel? When was the first time I felt that? Again, it's good just to start to recognize patterns and to see where it is that you really need to go to start working through some of this. Once you've kind of done some journaling about and figuring out naming the emotion, but not naming the story, figuring out, the first time you felt that way, how often you felt that way. If you're still looking, you need some regulation, breathing is a great way to kind of help calm the nervous system. I have a free breathing exercise on my website. Again, touching feet to ground. Get outside and touch some grass, if even better, right? That grounding effect is legit. Get outside and get some vitamin D. All of those things are going to help you calm your nervous system as you breathe, because we need you in a calm, regulated space. We talked about this in the first episode, before you can really start to make lasting change, before you can make your own embodied boundaries, or you can heal wounded parts of you. We need you to be in a regulated space where you feel safe and comfortable. And then if it feels right to you, you can add an affirmation onto that. If it feels cheesy, don't do it. But if it feels good in your body, add an affirmation. Remind yourself that you are safe, and remind yourself that it's okay for others to say what they need. Remind yourself that your worth is not determined by the access to that other person, and vice versa. Your worth is not determined by how much access you give other people. Notice what you feel in your body. Notice where you feel uncomfortable. Is it in your throat? Is it in your stomach? Is it in your head? Is it in your neck? Do you feel like you want to cry? Do you feel like you want to throw up? Do you feel like you need a hug? Start to notice these things. You're getting to know yourself on a whole new level. You're getting to know yourself. If you're a mom, you're getting to know yourself on the level you know your children. Guaranteed, you can watch your child's body language and you know what they need before they can verbally say what they need. You're getting to know yourself on that personal level. You might even be able to do that for your spouse. But can you do it for you? That's what we're trying to get back to. We have to reframe boundaries. Boundaries are not rejection. Boundaries are regulation. And boundaries are good. A regulated person has boundaries. I want you to take that away from today. Again, if you take anything away from today, that is one of the things I want you to take. A regulated person has boundaries. So if somebody else has a boundary, that means they've got a better chance of being a grounded, regulated person. If you have a boundary, that means you're got a better chance of being a grounded, regulated person. A boundary is not an insult, and but it is an invitation to grow. So if you feel some kind of way about somebody else's boundary, it is not an insult to you. It is an invitation for you to grow. It is an invitation for you to look into yourself eternally and figure out what it is that you might need to heal, or a place that you might need to grow. The more we respect other people's no's, the more we feel safe in offering our own boundaries. So it is also a benefit for you to feel so regulated within yourself that you can accept other people's boundaries, because in consequence, it's helping you understand that you can offer more boundaries. This is how a relationship matures, a relationship with yourself, a relationship with the person that is putting the boundary out, not by unlimited access. Unlimited access, lack of boundary, lack of self-respect, lack of respect for the other person. Mutual respect is from boundaries. Relationships mature and show mutual respect through boundaries. I want you to remember that boundaries can stir up grief, for sure. They can stir up grief, anger, loneliness. Boundaries are not bad. It means that there is a wound inside of you speaking, a codependency, an inconsistency. Who knows, right? Who knows what that wound is? We all have vastly different stories and different relationships and different lives. And it would be impossible for me to name where that wound is coming from. But if you dig deep enough, you're going to be able to find that. It just means there's a wound speaking to you. And now, hopefully, after this podcast today, you have a few more tools to learn how to sit and regulate and learn how to listen with compassion to yourself. We talked about in the first episode, to be able to set an embodied boundary, we have to have capacity and compassion and empathy. And this is where it really shows up, right? When we are reacting to somebody else's boundary, we have to have capacity, compassion, and empathy for ourselves and for the other person. Now you have more of these tools, and hopefully this will help you as you move through some of the rejection that we feel when someone else throws a boundary at us. But if you have any questions about this, feel free. Drop me a comment below. Reach out to me on Instagram, andrea.k.wellness, or shoot me an email at info@andreakwellness. I would love to talk to you more about this. I'll drop the programs that I mentioned that could be helpful, and the free resources that could be helpful, in the caption or description of wherever you're listening to this podcast. And I also want to remind you that we have the Good Girls Quitters Club that is opening up on August 11th, and there's still a few spaces left in that. So if you want to unpack the patterns and learn how to reclaim your space and hold boundaries and heal old wounds and help build safety within yourself, so you don't feel like you're constantly chasing it from somebody else, then you might want to join the Good Girls Quitters Club. It's going to be a small group of ladies. I'm capping it at 10 people, but this is the space where together we're going to talk through and hash through some of our own personal experiences. We're going to lift each other up. We're going to provide actionable steps. We're going to go deeper together. You're going to have access to me. You're going to have access to other ladies. And together as a group, as a cohort, we're going to spend 8 weeks together figuring out how to peel the labels off, to no longer be worried about being a good girl, right? And we're going to step into being a fully embodied woman who has fully embodied boundaries and who can accept other people's boundaries without taking offense to it. So if that sounds like something you want, again, reach out to me on Instagram, through email, through the website. Any of that is fine. And I want to say thank you again for being here, for listening to this, for liking this podcast or liking this episode. And I will see you in 2 weeks. Work on that homework. And I will see you in 2 weeks on episode 3, where we're talking about how do we build boundaries that are firm but yet fluid, so we don't isolate behind them. I will see you in 2 weeks, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Thanks for being here.